Colony in Space, the fourth serial of Doctor Who's 8th season, first broadcast in 6 parts from the 10th of April to the 15th of May 1971, and written by Malcolm Hulke. This is also the last story I actually needed to watch in order to complete my third Doctor collection, as the third Doctor had 24 serials, to which I've now seen all of them, seen the entire third Doctor's run. But anyway, to the actual story itself. Now, with Doctor Who in the 70s, especially during Jon Pertwee's era, they ran into a little bit of a problem, because the Doctor had been banished to Earth by the Time Lords to serve out his punishment for interfering too much with time. And as a result of that, they were kind of limited in the stories they could actually tell, because they found that only really 2 types of stories were available to them at that particular time, those being an alien invasion or a mad scientist. Now, some of these stories, they didn't actually manage to twist in a way to actually make them work. Stories like the Silurians, in which the aliens were already here and predated humanity. But when they began to run dry of them, they decided, well, we'll find ways around it. Like, okay, we want to place the story on a different planet. How do we do that? The Doctor isn't allowed to leave Earth. It was like, the Time Lords are giving him a little leeway. Time Lords have allowed him to do it. Now, in this particular story, the Time Lords discover that they're missing several files on a Doomsday weapon, a specific Doomsday weapon. So, with the Doctor back on Earth trying to repair his dematerialization circuit, he manages to put together a brief one and tries to install it in his TARDIS, to which this is actually Jo Grant's, played by Katie Manning's, first time actually inside the TARDIS. Like, Jon Pertwee's Doctor, with him so far, she had mostly just been on Earth, just kind of learning about Earth things, but here she actually gets to see the inside of the Doctor's TARDIS and actually gets to go on her first travel with him, which proves to be quite alarming for her, because while the Doctor had told her that he could travel through time and space, she never truly believed it until this point. On a separate note, the TARDIS interior that we see here, I'll admit this isn't one of my favourites. I mean, maybe it looks better in black and white, but with this particular story, I just feel like it's a little bit cramped. But that's just me. Anyway, the Doctor tries to install it in the TARDIS, and the TARDIS gets taken over by the Time Lords, who send them to the planet of Uxarius in the year 2472. They end up, while there, meeting a group of colonists who, on the planet of Uxarius, who have seemingly arrived to just try and live out their days farming and doing what they do. Greeted by the colony's leader, Robert Ash, played by Robert Ringham, as well as several other of the colonists, including his daughter Mary, played by Helen Worth, Leeson, played by David Webb, Leeson's wife Jane, played by Sheila Grant, and David Winton, played by Nicholas Pennell. However, they've got a problem in that their crops don't seem to be growing, they're running low on food, they've got very little left, and they're just trying to grow things, but things aren't growing. And at the same time, they're being kind of haunted or kind of stalked by monstrous creatures that are killing people throughout the colony. And so eventually discovered that the creatures aren't really there, it's actually machinery controlled by another group. And this group are actually miners or scavengers, and they've come to Uxarius mainly because of the precious ores, precious minerals that the planet Uxarius has beneath its surface, and they believe that the planet has been reserved for mining. And so it becomes a little bit of a debate between both sides about whether the planet should be used for colonization or for mining. And I'll admit the miners... okay, how do I explain this delicately without offending people? Well, I kind of think that the miners are a little bit like stories of bad HOAs. Now, to be fair here, HOAs aren't really a thing here in England. Aren't really a thing in Britain. I understand they're a lot more common in places in America, and HOAs are as different as any other group of people. You've got the good ones, you've got the ones who are just kind of in the middle, and then you've got the notorious bad ones that you hear from many Reddit posts. And to me, these miners, they sound very much like a bad HOA. Like, they trying to set up things to scare the colonists away or convince them to leave, going, well, if you don't like it here, you can always leave. And they attempt to do this by getting them attacked by their Mark III servo robots, kind of disguising them as kind of brutal attacks with the use of synthetic claws and the like. Now, two other things that pop up on the planet. One is a set of primitives. Primitive people who are kind of... They don't actually talk. They're shown to be kind of telepathic, and they have a city kind of deep inside the rock, to which the colonists will often give them food, but then the primitives can also be shown to be rather aggressive if challenged too much. So it's revealed that their leader can actually talk through some kind of telepathic influence and tries to tell the Doctor to not come back to their city. But then you got the major point of this story, and another big selling point, the Master, played by Roger Delgado. Now, earlier in the story, before the Doctor and Jo had left Earth, the Brigadier had come into his lab saying that there was a report that was possibly about the Master. So he was going off to look into it, only for the Master to show up here. Now, the Master ends up turning up as an adjudicator, because both sides kind of argue that they have the right to the planet, either for colonization or for mining, to which the Master, well, they call for an adjudicator to come from Earth to ultimately decide who gets the planet. And the Master shows up impersonating an adjudicator and ends up signing it over to the miners. Namely because they appear to be more evil and more on his side alike, to which ends up being a big kind of fight between both sides. However, the real reason that the Master has come to the planet Uxarius is because of the Doomsday weapon. The files that were stolen from the Time Lords, that was the Master, and he has come looking for a Doomsday weapon that he could use to basically hold whole galaxies to ransom. Like, even he tries to convince the Doctor to join him once they actually discover the weapon, saying that they could bring peace to the universe by ruling over it. To which it does actually lead to one of my favourite Jon Pertwee lines in this particular story, as when Roger Delgado tries pitching these rules to him, the Doctor responds with, "You'll just never understand. I want to see the universe, not rule it." Which I'll admit I do enjoy that kind of idea. Now, the miners who... I'm sorry, I introduced a lot of the colonists, but skipped over the miners. The miners, they're mostly okay, to which the main leader of them is a man named Captain Dent, played by Maurice Perry, and even though he doesn't show much emotion in the story, he's very much kind of stern and overlooking and uncaring, you can tell he's just having a ball with this, just watching these people and ruling them. You've got another one named Norton, played by Roy Skelton, who is a bit of a surprise to see him in this particular story, given that Roy Skelton voiced a lot of the Daleks and the Daleks and the Time Lords. No, hang on, no. Sorry, I'm getting my brain mixed up here. Daleks and the Cybermen. He was pretty much the voice of the Daleks and the Cybermen during the 1970s and parts of the 80s. So just having him here in this story does well. But the kind of sympathetic member of the miners who we see is a man named Caldwell, played by Bernard Kay, who is very much... He doesn't like doing what he's doing. He mostly just tries to get by saying that he's just following orders. But at the same time, you do feel for him. Especially towards the end when the colonists manage to regain control of the situation, and Caldwell asks if he can join them. Like, he understands he can't go back to Earth, so asks if he can join the colony. They go, "Well, I'm sure we can find work for you. We can find work for an out-of-work miner, certainly." Like, "Oh, certainly, we can do that." And ultimately, I think Colony in Space, it's not the greatest Season 8 story, but I do think it's a good story overall. Anyway, the Doctor and Jo manage to get the TARDIS back, with it previously having been stolen by the Primitives. The weapon is destroyed, the Primitive city is destroyed, and the colonists and the surviving miners manage to work out a deal with each other, and the Doctor and Jo go back aboard the TARDIS and end up returning back to UNIT about a second after they left, to which Brigadier doesn't, "You'll never get that thing working." He's like, "It's acting as if we've been away." I was like, "We've never been away." Good to him, we haven't. It's like, what's going on? Like, don't try and explain it to him, Jo. He'll never understand. So, there we go. I've completed Colony in Space, and thus completed my third Doctor collection. What do I think of Season 8 overall? I think it's a pretty good story. I will say my favourite out of Season 8 was probably The Mind of Evil, but that's just me. I might do a full ranking of Season 8 and of the third Doctor's era at some point in the future. I may do, I might not. But there we go. That's my quick little review of the story Colony in Space. Will be my next Doctor Who watch through? Well, once again, I've got an idea. We'll see if I follow through with it. Anyway, until next time, see ya.